I remember applying to architecture school at Tulane, and I didn't get in, so I was crushed. Tulane accepted me and said, if you can prove to us that you can get a 3.5 GPA and reapply to architecture school, you can do summer program and come in. So I proved them right, and I got my 3.8, and I got into architecture, and I never looked back.
That's awesome.
You could drop me into that school today, and I'd do it all over again.
Really? Welcome to the In the Arena podcast. My name is Jared Miguez, a co-host on this podcast that brings you the inspiring stories of our clients who are leaders and innovators across different industries in Southeast Louisiana. They are visionary entrepreneurs, savvy real estate professionals, media creators, military business owners, and community champions. And we are going to showcase the remarkable achievements and share their personal stories. Tune in for insightful conversations, valuable lessons, and motivational stories that are going to reveal their secrets to success and offer you insights to help you on your own path. Welcome to In the Arena podcast. Welcome to the In the Arena podcast. We have some good friends, Matt and Caroline, and then a special co-host today, Rebecca Saucier.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, guys.
Our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
So there's a couple reasons why I'm excited about this, and I'm even more excited after we had a little bit of the show prep. Just some people who have been around this parish for a long time, and made a really big impact on this parish. I mean, everywhere you turn, there, y'all touch some form of architecture or some form of the building structure around here. And I know I've been to Caroline's house, so y'all do a phenomenal job. Thank you. That house is absolutely amazing. So Matt, let's not Mr. Matt.
Matt,
yeah,
please.
I even call him Matt.
Yeah, she calls me Matt at work.
Yeah. Let's talk about your history with St. Tammany Parish. You talked about where you came from. So how did you get here, and what's your business and what you do?
Sure. So I'll start with the business is an architecture design firm, really high-end design, and we'll get into that in a minute. I was born and raised in New Orleans, grammar school there through high school. Actually, even went to Tulane University. After getting my degree in architecture, I was married young, and we had a baby young who happens to be Caroline over here.
That's me.
If that's okay to throw in there. And with that said, we just decided that we needed to move to St. Tammany to raise our family. Yeah. It was really a family decision. Yeah. I was against it because I'm a big New Orleans boy, and I still love it and go there. In fact, we're going Friday night to dinner with some friends. So the point is we came here really mostly to raise family.
So if you're going to go back to New Orleans to go to dinner, because there's great places in St. Tammany now, where are you going to dinner?
I'm going to throw this out there because who I'm going to dinner with is Paul Varisco, who is Paul Varisco on the Milestones. He's a great friend of mine. I designed his house probably 35, 40 years ago, rebuilt it after Katrina, and his son-in-law is Steve Gleason. So
nice.
I've done a lot of design work with Steve and Michelle also. So we're going to dinner, and Paul always picks.
Oh, so you don't get to choose.
He owns Mr. John's Steakhouse, and that's usually a Friday afternoon lunch, but we'll find out. I don't know yet.
I've never been to Mr. John's, but I heard it's a great steak.
Amazing.
Yeah.
An old-fashioned, and you just feel deep-rooted New Orleans when you're in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So being that there are some great places to eat in New Orleans, everybody knows that, but I don't think people realize the places that you can go and spend time with in St. Tammany Parish anymore, right? And so,
amazing.
You said that you came here 35 years ago, right after you got married, and there was nothing on East Boston Street. There's no cars on the road, and on a Sunday afternoon. No cars
on the road,
and it's different now. So as the town's developed over the last 35 years you've been here, what is it like to be a part of that in St. Tammany Parish?
Well, I again. When we moved here, it was. I remember that we came to rent first, and there was one house to rent at the time, which is interesting. Yeah. And we rented, and I think it took 3 months and maybe 3 or 4 kind of St. Paul's Football Fridays where I said to me, my wife, we're in, let's do it.
Yeah.
And we bought a lot on 15th in Massachusetts, right by the St. Paul's practice field, and we built a house in our late 20s, and the next thing you know, we've just kind of committed. Remind me your question again, so I'm going to get back on track.
How has the growth of St. Tammany Parish happened in the last 35 years?
So I know where I'm going with that. I commuted for the first 10 years. It was miserable. I went from the middle of Old Covington to the middle of uptown New Orleans. Yeah. I owned an office on Magazine Street. I had 2 partners at the time that were both architects, and I was kind of on board with them. And next thing you know, we decided, and it was a woman that was very involved in the development of St. Tammany Parish, Jan Robert, who's very involved today, and she asked me at the time, "You've got to open a satellite office over here. And I laughed it off. And next thing you know, I did. And I bought a tiny little building behind
At the time, Judice's.
It was Judice's. It was actually not even Judice's yet.
Oh my gosh.
It was a little hamburger shop and poor boy shop.
Now it's Matina Bella.
Now it's Matina Bella. This is down on Courthouse Alley, and I bought that little building with a landscape architect friend of mine, and we bought the building and we worked out of that little satellite for a while, and then an opportunity came. Again, I don't know if I'm saying too much, but about the community, because I think it has a lot to do with it.
Sure.
Angele Darling and Ann Jemison, who own Coffee Rainey, were good friends of mine, and I actually did work for Angele and Gary on their house on River Road, and got to be really good friends with them. And they opened the big business on Lee Lane, and Angele called me one day and said, "You've got to come by this building on the corner of Lee Lane in Boston," which I always looked at as sort of this beacon of the entrance to the city, and I thought, I can't afford that building. And this goes back 16, 17 years ago, and
it's funny because you have to know Angele.
You have to know
She's
Angele,
saying,
forcefully.
I can't look at this ugly building another second.
Yeah.
You got to
Yeah.
do something
Is
with
it the
this,
one she's
Matt.
operating it?
She's operating it, but my office is across the street.
Gotcha.
I'm the 2-story kind of townhouse on the corner that's brown and white. So anyway, long story short is I said, Angele, if you buy it with me, we'll do it. So that's exactly what we did. Nice. Angele and Ann were 50%, and I went in 50%, and we bought the building, and it's paid for. Nice. So it's been a nice situation.
But with the growth of St. Tammany, I mean, gosh, the timing is pretty, I hate to say lucky, but in a way, it couldn't have had better timing. Organically, Matt is growing a following on this side of the lake, whereas 90% of his business was still in New Orleans. We're slowly building. And so over the past 35 years, it's gone from 80-20, 50-50. Now we're literally 95%, 5%. So North Shore versus South Shore. So the complete ratio has flip-flopped on its head.
Are you still with those two partners?
No. So that's a great segue into how it all kind of happened. No, I ended up becoming a sole proprietor, and Martha Jane, who is still one of my very dear friends and an architect that is working in Little Rock, Arkansas, and Neil Van Dalen, my other partner, is in Charleston, South Carolina, where his roots were from. Cool. And through the year, we still remain friends. In fact, Martha Jane comes and is a visitor in our house at least once a year, her husband and her kids, and we've just been very close. In fact, we've collaborated on some projects together. Mm-hmm. Nice. In fact, twice in the last 3 years, we did 2 projects
in Arkansas.
In Arkansas.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah. In, where was it?
One was in Bentonville and one was in Hot Springs.
Hot Springs and Bentonville.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, since we've been here today, you've talked a lot about collaborating with other architects. Is that a normal thing in the architecture world for architects to collaborate together?
So, no. Martha Jane had the clients, and she's kind of really about 8 years older than me. Mm-hmm. So she was sort of, I'm getting out of this. Gotcha. So I went in and kind of, with my team and my staff, we were able to kind of really produce and do. Yeah. And she was the front man in Arkansas. But I did a lot of traveling. Yeah. So I would go back and forth. What happened though was with their moving and me, I think it really was kind of a really good change in my profession, because at the point where I really became a sole proprietor and became Studio MV, I think my business really kind of grew from there. Yeah. Not that they were holding me back. They're incredibly talented architects and people. But the concern was, and this is one thing that I have to I'll bring up now, is in architecture, and I designed I graduated from Tulane, master's degree in architecture, passionate about what I did. But a little story I'd like to tell is that when I did all of that, I growing up as a kid, I was really into art, and so instead of playing footballs on Saturday morning, I was really going to art class. And I had an incredible teacher named June Lampy, who lived to 100 years old and died recently, but a renowned artist in New Orleans, where I've really learned the process of painting, from watercolors to old masters to egg washes to, acrylics, you name it. From abstract to old masters, I really learned the techniques of art. Yeah. And I was just that nerd kid that did that. And went into architecture school, and I always had the passion, and I was one of these,
but don't forget about the influence of your family.
Yeah.
Right. My grandmother was a really incredible artist. My mother was an artist and had a lot of degrees, but she was also a licensed interior designer.
Just kind of just impeccable taste. My great grandmother was straight from France, and just had this sense about her that you knew she was personified style, and that kind of fed into my grandmother, Matt's mom, who then had
the same taste.
You're
And
speaking all of the things for
I
Becky
know,
right now.
But
I'm into all this.
very classical, very traditional, but my mom had a
Timeless.
twist on things. But what ended up happening, being the youngest of 4 kids, and my older sister being 10 years older, by the time I was coming up, they were in college, or and I was the baby that came 8 years later. And the point is that I started being involved with my parents moving. After being raised in a house kind of until I was about 13, they started moving and
flipping houses.
And it just from the Garden District to Old Metairie to Lake Vista.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you saw
I mean,
stuff
Did
there.
your dad do construction and your mom designed? Or?
my mom would do interior design. My dad was a mechanical engineer who ran a major ship repair company. So no, Dad was not into design at all, but my mother and my grandmother were. So I just grew up with the sense of understanding.
Yes.
Surrounded by house and an appreciation for
and I kind of became
Architecture in
passionate
general,
about it.
especially in New Orleans. I mean,
was
it's so
about to-
unique in the way that
So-
things look, and you can tell, even like going like one of the projects I did with Haven, like you can tell there are some New Orleans style vibes to that place, right? I mean, it just sounds like it came from your roots.
So getting back, and that's exactly right. It came from my roots. And you ask about collaborating. What ended up happening was as I graduated, and it's a long story, but I'll do it quick because I have a tendency to chat a little too long.
This is great. This is
No, but when I was, you could ask me in 5th grade what was I going to be, and I would say an architect. Nice. It was in me. So I think I learned later in life, and y'all probably pick up on some of that now, that I might be a little ADD. I wish I knew about medications, but at the time, I remember applying to architecture school at Tulane, and I didn't get in, and Tulane accepted me, but I wasn't in the architecture program, and part of it was my grades were great. My high school career was active and involved, and I was student council and involved in a lot of activities. But the next thing you know, I don't get in, so I was crushed. So Tulane accepted me and said, if you can prove to us that you can get a 3.5 GPA and reapply to architecture school, you can do summer program and come in. So I proved them right, and I got my 3.8, and I got into architecture, and I never looked back.
That's awesome.
You could drop me into that school today, and I'd do it all over again.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
loved
awesome.
Loved it. So it's passion.
We tell people
right?
all the time, like when they come, if they want to be a lawyer, like you either have to want to do that your whole life, or you have to have something you're really passionate about that you can apply the law to. Because if you're not passionate about something like that, you're going to have failure and things that happen to you, and you can't let that discourage. You got to figure out a solution to get
Totally
in.
understood.
Yeah. So I do have a question about technical, like the difference between a commercial and residential architect, right? Because I mean, I know that you can go to architecture school and you can build really big buildings. You can, do commercial.
That's great.
And not a ton of people, at least as I've kind of gotten older, use an architect to necessarily build a house. Like what specialty do y'all offer as an architecture firm? She's looking to you, Caroline.
No, I know where to take it, but I just
for
don't
it.
want to talk too much.
No, please.
What I was going to do to kind of conclude is there's a difference between residential and commercial. And one is in residential, you can kind of look at it from a design passion point of view, and you can kind of look at it more as because you become very personally involved with your clients. You know all of their inner secrets, if you will. And I don't mean that in any way other than you learn a lot about people. And people will say, why do you want to be involved in, because it can be conflicting, if you will, especially between husbands and wives. But the long and short of it is, and with all of us, we've kind of created this, I think, approach where we handle our business and as a boutique business, and kind of dot I's and cross T's and go from A to Z with them. And that's part of the interior design and architectural design. But to answer your question about architecture, the reason that I really chose, and we were doing it more as a firm when I was with the other two also, although they were both licensed architects. When I got out of school in the day that I did, which was 1984, there was a 9-part exam to take, and it was offered once a year, and it was only offered in Baton Rouge, and you would literally take a 5-day exam for 5. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And
Sounds like
I,
a bar
Bar exam, yeah.
so but it was day, and again, 9 parts from structural design and, lateral forces to site design, building design, construction methods and techniques and, all kinds of things. I wasn't a good tester, so I passed site design and building design the first time. And if you've ever heard anybody talk about design, that's my nature. That comes naturally. I sat for the exam year after year and I passed a lot of parts, but I never got through structure. So that's why I'm not a licensed architect. So which I make that very clear. It was my biggest concern in my life, like my biggest failure.
Well, it's a vulnerability that's coming up that Matt's now realizing this is actually a strength of mine.
This has really worked out well for me because I chose residential. And when I talk to other architects in the community, they know me, they know exactly what my situation is. I can't deny the fact that I've got my master's in architecture, but technically I can't really be called an architect. Yet I have a licensed architect on board. I've got another architect that's one part away from being a licensed architect. So I've got this, we do architecture all day long.
Yeah.
And anyone can design a home.
Anyone can design a home without a license.
That's the biggest difference.
Yeah.
That's how it really fell into place.
So commercial architecture, you have to have the license.
It's ADA
And
guidelines.
You have to hit.
Sure.
Right.
Trust me, we know all about that when we
Well,
built the
yes.
building.
and
Yeah.
in fact, Justin Greenleaf is a friend of mine, and we've collaborated on projects. I've collaborated with Kieran Weldon on projects with Fauntleroy Latham and Barr. I've collaborated with Steve Rome in New Orleans. I feel like I'm brought in a lot to be kind of the idea guy or the design guy in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
It's the taste you were talking about earlier.
I hope that doesn't come across the wrong way.
No,
but
some
yeah.
people have it and some people don't.
Yeah.
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 And it's interesting too, and I'm thinking about it from a business standpoint because, when you look at a business and, what we use is a DISC assessment, but it's a behavioral assessment.
We do a DISC assessment.
Yeah, y'all do too. Yeah.
We
And so,
do.
everybody who we interview, everybody that's on our team, our clients, if we can get them to take the assessment, we want to know how they kind of all relate and how they all fit into place, right? You have to have the creative element to business, but you also have to have the systems and structure on the back end to support the creative people and either keep them between the boundaries, but also keep them moving in the right direction. Because
That's where I come in.
Exactly. Well, and that was my point. And so it's interesting, there's 4 partners and not everybody, most people will tell you, don't partner with people or don't have an even number. Well, we decided that we wanted to partner.
I see y'all jumping in your ads. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're fun. But
Good marketing.
the way that we unintentionally but intentionally all came together was that we all fit very evenly around the disc wheel, right?
Nice.
And so, I'm very outgoing and more of like the driver.
Are you the I?
Yeah, I'm a DI, and then John, our partner, is an IS, and then Becky's a SCCS, and then Lauren's a DI, and so DC. So we're all fit really well together. But it's an interesting dynamic between people who are partners and we get each other and we all on the same page. But that value that some people throw out there of family is a hard thing sometimes because we're not family, right? And so, like at the end of the day, we're partners, and y'all have a different dynamic though. Y'all are truly our family, and you have the structure, you have the creativity. How does that dynamic work at the office?
It's interesting.
Why don't you take it from a standpoint too of who we are in terms of the firm and the 6 of us?
Yeah, that too. Can I touch on real quick how I ended up here?
Yeah, of course.
Growing up, as we've touched on, I was kind of the first kid among all of my parents' friends' kids.
Oh, really?
So I'm the one child with a bunch of adults. Yeah. And a lot of times I'd be going to work with my dad, spending the day, watching him draw, going to job sites, walking around construction, playing rubber gun,
That's right.
wars with his partner Neil, and always had just a great experience in that culture, in kind of the architectural realm.
Yeah.
But I also
creative realm.
knew deep down I didn't have the passion or the talent that my dad did, and that's just something that's totally innate. But I did try. I had
Auburn?
to, I said before going into my senior year of high school, it's like, I really need to make a decision. Am I going to go into architecture school or am I going to play soccer?
Yeah.
And I couldn't do both. So I ended up going to Auburn Architecture Camp. And I will never forget the first assignment. I knew instantly, this is not the place for me.
Really?
And outside of the window, I'm peering, and there's the soccer girls walking to, and I had my answer within the first hour, but unfortunately I didn't pack my cleats and couldn't go. But, long story short, I end up going to Rhodes for college, end up doing business curriculum with the idea that maybe I can help my dad's business from a leadership end, from a organizational end, from setting up processes to help him play to his strengths, his creativity. And he doesn't need to pick up the phone for every potential new client phone call, for every problem. We can use our DISC assessment that came way later over time, but
we use it.
Yeah, it's great.
So yeah, I mean, now
I'm a straight I, by the way.
You're I,
I am I.
and I'm a full-fledged S, at least in this workforce. You know, because I feel like
I'm
you
a
can.
lot.
Yeah, and to kind of give some context to that, like a high I is going to be very creative, outgoing, social. Like they're always out and about building relationships, and the S is more of the structured, oriented, process oriented, trusting person. That's always the strength and the steady hand for somebody who is an I, which is interesting.
Well, when we did this analysis, and I want you to get back, I remember walking in, and Meredith is the woman we used. I don't know if you all used the same company or not, but she walked in and she goes, "I know my I." Well, I didn't know where I was going with that.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, sorry about that.
Those
But
people are great.
It's a funny balance because we can butt heads, absolutely, all day long. But then we'll turn around and be like, "Hey, so what you want for lunch tomorrow?" Or what do you want for lunch next? We can bounce
Can I
right
come
back.
see the grandkids tonight?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like this great kind of like just underlying respect, rapport that nobody else in the office can really butt heads with you. And sometimes you do need to be called out because you're getting a little too emotional about something. And that is something else I'd love to kind of dive in on because you mentioned commercial versus residential. When I talk to young students who are going into the field, I'm like, so are you a people person? Or do you like to sit and get some tasks done? Do you like to sit behind a computer and really crank things out? Would you prefer not to have those conversations? And if they say I'm a people person, I said, well, then I'm going to direct you to pursue or look into residential a little more than commercial because it is so personal. It is all relationship oriented. We are really getting to know how you live, how you operate, what your family is like, all in the first meeting. And that's kind of where Matt's little X factor, I think, comes in that differentiates him too from other people in the community or even in the field. People are so comfortable with him instantly. Yeah. So from the gun, even in our interview where we're also trying to get to know you, are we a good match mutually? Yeah. Matt's like, I got you. And he starts hand sketching while they're talking and starts designing a home literally on the spot.
I'm the old-fashioned guy.
And so that is also something, it's a lost art. Yeah. Now it's all computer-based, and we really try to maintain that art factor and go back to those roots of those art classes and kind of offer something completely different than anyone else has through that personality, the emotional aspect, the connecting on a personal level, the trust, and just making them feel comfortable with the sketch. It's an X factor.
You ever have to mediate between husband and wife?
All the time.
You know, I say that, I do, and sometimes husbands and wives are totally on board.
Yeah.
It's usually really pleasant and kind, but there's a jabbing that goes on.
Like we had to go to marriage counseling 3 times in the middle of building.
I was about to say it is part counselor,
but it was sure. Like, we learned how to communicate too about things. But it was hard, and it was just the two of us building it too.
And I was going to say, did you have a builder involved or a designer? But if that person could maybe help could help if they have the right person.
I've also had litigation issues where the contractor gets in trouble by doing something one spouse says and the other one's like no, or the wife changes the budget and the husband's like, you didn't approve the budget with me. So now I tell clients you need to have one point of contact, and you need to look the husband and the wife in the eye and say, you know, which one of you gets, final say so.
Absolutely a major part of it.
And I think in it's kind of a segue off of what you were talking about, and I loved what you kind of put in there. But our firm is, like I said, a boutique firm. We're
small by design.
Small by design. We're 6 people big. We're 6 people strong, and we, from office management to kind of running the business, to head designer here, to 2 architects on board. The whole idea is that we are part of everybody's job, and everybody in the office knows every client. Yeah. It's inclusive. And I will say, I schematic, we do this thing where we go through 5 stages where we interview people and we really get to know them. We go to their property. We look at, or I always say to my clients, and this is absolutely the fact, it's not about me, it's about you. It's not my house, it's your house. My job is to instill that good taste or to instill, and sometimes I really have to struggle with, but I have to be diplomatic with. But we go through kind of stages of programming, schematic design, full design development, full contract documents, engineering collaboration, where we do all of the engineering through an outsource, but it becomes part of our documents. Yeah. And then we do bid negotiation and construction observation. Oh, wow. So interior design is in there.
Yeah. So you worked with them a lot before you even begin.
Oh my gosh.
Begin
it is quite a process.
It's a process.
And that's one of kind of my biggest challenges is in a world of instant gratification, where you can even pull up a plan online and in 2 seconds send it to permit, essentially. Yeah. How do we sell our differentiating factor of, the quality, and good quality design takes time.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you have a style, or do you take somebody else's like vision and style of like different types of architecture and say, I'm going to help you create your vision? Or would somebody come to you because you're this type of architect and you just specialize in this design?
That's a great question. Just from a standpoint, it varies. It could be, I would say that my work is very site specific, neighborhood specific, north, south, east, west orientation specific. Nice. You all know what a west sun does to
100%.
So all of those things, if I'm in a rigid neighborhood, like Chafuncta Country Club, what we have to do is design it where if we're not on a big enough piece of property and we're stuck with west sunsets, then we've got to think about the design in terms of cover and protection and shade, whether that's passive by trees and organic or whether it's being done more through some sort of trellis or blind situation. Yeah. But I would say that my work is, I can be mid-century modern flat roof to historic New Orleans. We've done a couple or many major projects in the Vieux Carré where we have followed very particular 18, 20 buildings where we've had to do additions or renovations. So it's really that specific.
Yeah. So I only know I've been in one of your houses, and it's Caroline's house,
and it's very modern.
It's very modern,
right?
But it was badass. I mean, very cool.
And modernism can
do what?
Is that the one with the tree in it?
No. If I didn't see that part of it, no, it's overlooking the wall. It's overlooking the river in town, and it's raised, and it's just really cool. Really tall ceilings, the artwork, the fixtures are cool.
The one thing that I think is a standard in my work is that it's classically inspired. It's always based on true forms, true roof lines. Nothing is forced. Yeah. Nothing is there's no collision. Everything is based on sort of evolving through design. Yeah. Purity, cleanliness, proportion. And if I'm like right now, we're actually been hired for this really great couple that on like 80 acres of land where we're doing a classic Palladian house, which is a cruciform, like beautiful, square, pyramidal kind of classic Palladio. And it's so interesting because as well as I studied architecture and went through all of that, I still bring my books out and kind of look at, before I do anything, I'm kind of checking, double checking, and triple checking how things should really be done, right?
We're always following the client's lead.
Always.
Sometimes they're coming in like this specific couple with very specific imagery, inspiration. This is exactly what we want. And how do we fit our lifestyle with that?
And I think of a client from years ago, Julie, she would crack up that it's because it's pre-Katrina, but Julie Kitziger. And we got along famously, and her husband was great, and he was a lawyer, and she was a lawyer, but it was like, she goes, okay, Matt, I've decided, and I literally, and don't laugh at me when I say this, it was a fax that came through. And she goes, okay, we've talked about it. Eric and I have decided we want you to just go wild. In quotes, go wild. So it's this really beautiful house in Old Metairie that we never talk about much, but it's classically beautiful, but funky at the same time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Does that answer?
Yeah, of course. That's great. I know that's exactly what I was looking for. And I do want to throw a little bit of a softball to you guys too. With all the particular rules, with all the historic districts in Mandeville and Covington, and I'm sure that Abita has some sort of restrictions on that kind of stuff. How valuable is it to have somebody who operates here as opposed to, we get it all the time. I'm going to go down to New Orleans to go meet with an attorney at One Shell Square.
Got it.
When the value that we can offer is is likely going to be more personal
in your neighborhood.
Yeah, and we're right down the street from you. We know what's going on here.
Yeah.
How valuable is that to have the architects that deal with the HOAs, that know Tarabella's restriction guidelines and all that stuff?
Not only that, soil conditions, wetlands, there's
soul boring tests that we have to do. Aesthetically, that's such a, I'm just going to say, like, how many houses? In fact, we probably have 4 going right now in Old Mandeville with the tree ordinances and working around the architecture of, we've done 3 houses from scratch on Lakeshore Drive. And then those that are just right off too. But the historic, all of the, like, I pride myself on following the rules, I like to say this, I like to avoid a variance, because a variance has to be a hardship. And when you're building a $2 million house or a $2.5 million house or $800,000, whatever it is, how hardship is it, right? Yeah. It's more of a I want.
For sure.
So I love it when I'm in a historic district, historic Covington, historic Abita Springs, historic Mandeville, New Orleans, BCC, or even HDLC. I mean, I have always presented, and I'm going to say this, I always succeed.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it that way.
Yeah, because you're creative, and
I'm following the rules within the guidelines, but pushing it where I have to.
Count what you're gonna say?
Well, basically, I mean, it's all relationship oriented too. We know what they're looking for. We know what they value. We've been there before. We have a rapport. They know us. So someone who's just coming in from out of state would be really have a huge learning curve if they wanted to present to the Historic Commission of Mandeville.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. I mean,
and that's part of our job. We present.
Yeah, for sure.
We do it, and we do.
Okay, and so you said something about moving over here, and it was not what it is today in St. Tammany Parish. Right? It's grown so much. But I'll say, I'm from Alexandria. She's from Livingston Parish, Denham Springs. Okay. And being from out of town, anybody who comes here that says, is it a hard place to build a relationship, to build business? And I tell people it's absolutely not if you can do 2 things. If you work really hard and you do the right thing. Because there's people in this town know that. Like, they have that feeling. You have to be humble, and you have to be willing to do the right thing. And if they know that you're going to work hard, they're going to welcome you into their community. And we found that with our business and the relationship side of that, when you're talking with the planning department, right? There's a lady over there I've been dealing with, and she's like made it through several different administration changes, and she's always there. Miss Ellen, she's like,
love Miss Ellen.
She's awesome, right?
I call her Ellen, but
I email her, call her, and she's always answering the phone. I'm sure she gets 1 million of those calls a day. And
she is awesome.
And how you graduate from law school is probably what she thinks whenever I call her. But she's great. But again, it's a relationship and a rapport that we build over time with her, and that's what you get when you live here and you work here. Correct. And you make an impact on the community here.
Yeah, totally.
So I do want to pivot before we finish. We got about 10 minutes left. I want to talk about what St. Tammany Parish means to you guys. I know we've talked about that a little bit, but y'all are very involved in the community, right? I mean, especially in the Covington community, that's where I at least see you guys the most. And our kids go to the same school, and you're helping at the church and all that stuff. So like, how did you find common values and finding your niche in the community that you spend time with, and what do you do to give back?
Again, we fell in love with it immediately, and a lot of it, I think, was the people. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Watching the cannonball finally, ricochet and hit 60 cars going down Boston on Sunday now, it's a lot better, although we don't want anybody hurt. No, the idea would be really church, meeting people, being involved at the St. Joseph Abbey, getting involved with the Carmelite nuns on River Road. We raised our family on a house on a River Road across the street from the Carmelites. Building and moving that business here, and then really getting involved both in the business and just becoming friends with people. I will say, look, we're only human. We do the best job we can. We like to have the right match of people. Probably built or designed and built over 700 houses through my life, and I want to get to the bottom of that. The interesting thing is you can't always make everybody happy, but you really try hard. Back to your question about the city, though, like even we about 3 years ago bought the building 2 doors down from us on Boston Street, next to the Greyhound, and we bought an idea where we do interior design services. So we have a showroom in there, which isn't really a store. It's not a store, but it's a showroom for our clients to touch, feel, see fabrics and leathers and how does something sit and all those kind of things. So we keep investing in the community. I think just the hotel has been a big part of the growth of the city over the last really 10, 12 years. I think it's been a lot. Watching the really fine restaurants that have really just started coming into town, it's really just a full commitment of just being involved in the community. I mean, the rebuild. Recently there was an article about the park, in Voelkel Park, the community playground. Caroline was a 5-year-old running around there raising boards, and have pictures of her. I was on that committee building the park.
Nice. Talk about a secret gem, like having a
isn't
birthday
it, though?
party at the Voelkel Park. I mean,
way to go.
you can just walk up there and they don't charge you anything. I don't think, maybe a little bit of money, and you can and they have the kids and all the playgrounds. And
it's great.
It's awesome.
The pavilion is where Mary had like a 4th or 5th grade birthday party.
It's
I have a
important to
feeling
protect
Lucille
those
was there.
spaces too.
Do what?
It's important to protect those spaces too.
100%. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They're part of the parish
Yeah.
for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you. I mean, the St. Peter's community, that whole the St. Paul, like everything in Covington. I similar to you, came from New Orleans. I didn't live in New Orleans, but I went to law school there and moved straight to Covington, bypassed Mandeville. Which some people like Mandeville people, Jonah and Mallory, they like swear
where my
by
husband's
Mandeville.
from.
You can't get them to move from Mandeville to Covington. But like I just have this affinity, especially in this area where I'm at. Right, I mean,
Right.
Terabella. I live here. I work here. Right next to the gym, the grocery store. It's all in St. Peter's. It's all right close, and it's growing, which is the fun part about it too.
There's a sector that I'm starting to really dip my toe into and really enjoying getting to learn more about the philanthropic world in Covington too. Yeah. The Northshore Community Foundation is amazing. They're doing excellent work, and it's been so much fun to really start to get ingrained and start to see how much generosity is out there in our community too, and giving back and serving not just the Covington, but the entire North Shore area, which encompasses multiple parishes. So.
We need to have them on the podcast. We do a lot. I mean, people come to us all the time asking. You're right. Like one of the most generous places in the world, I would imagine, because so many nonprofits are here.
Yep.
And the foundation is really solving a problem by pulling funds in so many different directions by keeping it in one area, so we can all give to the community we want. And do it the right way. And I think that they're doing a great job over there. Are you on the board or something?
I am actually newly on a board of a pitch competition subsect, which is being kind of run by the foundation more or less. Yeah. And they're going to be challenging nonprofits to collaborate in order to do a collective impact. And we get to I get to pick a secret judge who would then vote on the pitch competition and award the best pitch.
That's fantastic.
Long-term, 10-year sums of substantial money to make lasting, real change.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think, and I heard you, as you and I were on that committee together for St. Peter's, I think it's, and again, I don't mean this other way, other than I do think getting involved in volunteering has been so important.
For sure.
I was on the board of the St. Joseph Abbey. I was on the advisory council soon thereafter. I was on the board at SSA for the athletic field, for the athletic complex and the athletic board. And then I ended up being president of that school board. And Mimi was actually on the board at St. Peter's Church. My wife, she's been involved in the community. That's where you meet people, and that's where it spreads. And you just, when I walked into the coffee shop, at the coffee shop, as in St. Peter's coffee shop that Caroline and Christine run. It's when I met you.
For sure, I remember that moment.
I remember that moment I met you, and we clicked immediately. Yeah. And then you walked in one day, and I see you all around town too. Yeah. So the involvement's important.
I think that the biggest thing for me, and people come all the time asking like, how are y'all marketing your business? Like y'all are everywhere, and I tell everybody, well, I'm everywhere that the people I want to be in front of are at. Right. And it's because we're intentional about spending time with people we want to spend time with, in communities that we share values with. Right. And there's so much opportunity on the North Shore. You don't have to have everybody as your client. Like if that's your mindset, that everybody's your client, you have a really hard time building relationships with people. But if you know enough about yourself and your personality, and you know about the community enough, you can find yourself in places where the people that you're just going to be genuinely attracted to are going to be.
Yeah.
And that's how we try to run our business, and especially from marketing and our clients, honestly, too. I mean, we want to do business with people that we enjoy spending time.
And you want to see them, and you want to say hello to them, and
for sure, you're not running away whenever. The lawyers that have the back door that nobody knows about with their car packed there, so they can run. Like that's not how I want to live my life. And I don't live that way because the people I spend time with are the ones that genuinely enjoy spending time with.
My passion is watching businesses grow. And so I get so excited for our clients when I start to see them grow. Like, that's what really makes me happy. It's getting to see that, whether it's a nonprofit or, someone like y'all.
You bringing up St. Tammany, and of course St. Tammany is east and west. But there was a great article this past weekend about Mandeville and the culinary scene. I don't know if anybody saw it, but it was a great, and I'm one of these, I get the paper on Saturdays and Sundays. And I sit there and read it from beginning to end. And I love it with my coffee. It's just the way I am, right? So the point is, it's the old man in me. But I was going to say that there was this great article, and because I think Covington has shown that culinary and the sophistication in the restaurants. And there was this just incredible article about Mandeville being so. I think we're talking about the community.
Sure. And Slidell's getting there. That's where I live. Slidell has some great restaurants.
Listen, we've got 2 projects we're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Technically in
Bayou
Slidell.
Liberty. Oh,
really?
Bayou Liberty. 2 projects. Well, one wrapped up, and then one major project we're doing on Bayou Liberty, which I go to Slidell. I mean, it's Bayou Liberty's in the middle of Slidell. Yeah. There's some gems in Slidell. And I didn't mean east-west. There's east-west. I mean, St. Tammany is really kind of spread.
Jared about Slidell.
And then even Folsom, I don't even think of as St. Tammany. Well, it's St. Tammany.
I forget about that. You're right.
You're right. And I always think of that as, that's Washington. No, it's not.
You're right.
St. Tammany Parish.
Yeah, it's St. Tammany.
We kind of also joke that we have these relationships with our clients, and our projects go over 2 plus 3 years sometimes from start to finish. And at the end of it, we're friends. And not only that, it's like, we miss y'all. Can we do another project with you?
Well, I think a couple of clients right now that have said that to us recently.
And of course, the repeat clients are awesome too.
Yeah.
That's how we got to feel about our clients too.
Yes.
Like friends.
Yeah.
I still have to bill you.
Yeah.
And again, a little shout out to Slidell. I mean, Mimi and I have gone a couple of times to local theater over there and had dinner in Slidell, and we knew somebody, but it was really impressive.
Think of Palmetto's.
Palmetto's
I
is
love
incredible.
Palmetto's, yeah.
We're doing our brand shoot for Arena there this weekend.
Come on.
Are
we're
you
excited about going like the soda shop and go maybe Whiskey and Ash and Sorrento Coffee
Oh,
Shop
that's
and
awesome.
the Umbrella Alley and all that stuff to see that. So
That's great.
Well, look, as we wrap up, Caroline, I want to apologize to people knocking on your door to see your house. It's
I know, I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah,
Come on over.
You did a great job, and I'm if the lot next door comes for sale, maybe we'll build a replica.
I would love nothing more.
Well, appreciate y'all coming on today. It was a great
Thank you.
conversation.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.